Hello and welcome back to another video where we're gonna take a look at my 7900 XTX on the newest 24.1.1 driver, and we're gonna overclock it and we're gonna test 4 newer demanding games, and we're gonna compare it side by side what the performance gains are. How much more performance can we get by overclocking this GPU? Now this here is my driver software, and I'm showing you what the default profile is for my Nitro Plus 7900 XTX. And then I'm going to be dialing in my manual overclock, which is 3 gigahertz on the max frequency. And for an undervolt, I'm doing 1070 millivolt. And for minimum frequency, I'm doing 2500. I'm maxing out the power limit, of course. We're setting a 2700 megahertz for the memory, and we're going with fast timings. And that's going to be our overclock profile. So let's compare overclock versus no overclock. There will also be a little rant at the end of this video regarding the new drivers. But let's begin with Enshrouded. We're going to be running the game at 4K resolution, maxing out all the graphical settings, and we're using FSR2 Ultra Quality. This is the best way to experience this game on an AMD GPU because the only other form of anti-aliasing is FXAA, and that sucks. So FSR2 Ultra Quality works pretty good. And the game is quite demanding, although I do feel it looks really, really good. And this here is the house that I've built. Took a lot of time, but it came out pretty well. Kind of looks like a church, don't it? But yeah, that's besides the point. In this game, the gains to overclocking are not really anything great. And that comes at a cost of power consumption. But let's take a look and see what those metrics are. By overclocking, we've essentially gained 6% more frame rate on the averages, and we've gained 3% more on the 1% lows. So it's not that impressive in this game, but we're going to take a look at the other games where it's actually much better. This is, I would say, the worst case scenario for the games that I tested, okay? And it's going to depend on a game-by-game basis. So I would go as far as saying that it's not really worth overclocking in this game because we're consuming 60 more watts than we are with the default, and we're not really gaining that much more performance. We're essentially consuming 15% more power and more heat in our room, a louder card, for not much gain in performance. So it's going to depend on a game-by-game basis because there's a lot of outlandish claims out there that I see. People essentially say, well, you can overclock the 7900 XTX or the 4090 or this and that, and you gain 30% more performance, and it doesn't work like that. For the next game, we're going to take a look at Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, one of the best looking games in my opinion. The game looks really good, although I kind of seem to have lost interest in it a bit, but that's a different story. We're running the game at the Ultra preset with FSR3 set to quality. No frame generation or anything like that. And in this game, you can already see that we're getting a lot more performance out of the overclock. So I would say this game is best case scenario. I did about a 5 to 10 minute run, and we ended up getting 20% more on the averages and 20% more on the 1% lows by the end of this run. So that is actually really, really good. I would say this is the best case scenario. And I've seen people say that, you can gain an extra 20% performance out of your 7900 XTX if you manually overclock it. So in this game, yeah, you can gain a lot more performance, but it doesn't translate to every other game. As a matter of fact, from my own personal experience, the few games that I've paid a little more close attention to, I've seen about 5 to 10% on average. It can depend. Like I said, it can depend on the game. I was also going to check out Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, but that game has 120 FPS cap, and it's mostly at 120 a lot of the times, even with the default clock, so I didn't bother. I wanted to kind of put in games where they're a bit more demanding, and then we can see what the differences are. But anyway, this was the end of the run here for Avatar's Frontiers of Pandora. We're going to jump onto Alan Wake 2 next, and we're running the game at 4K native with the high quality preset. It doesn't max out every graphical setting, but pretty close, and obviously we've turned ray tracing off. Ray tracing is not really worth it in this game on AMD GPUs, in my opinion. You're just going to sacrifice a lot and it's not worth it, in my opinion. But anyway, so what do we have here in this forest run? Well, we get pretty good numbers. We get a 9 to 10% on the averages gained by overclocking the GPU, and we get 10% more on the 1% lows by overclocking the GPU. That is actually really, really good. Now, is it worth it to consume 15% more power? Well, that depends on the person, right? If you care about power, you're probably not gonna buy a Nitro plus 7900 XTX, right? This card is made to be overclocked. It's designed. So yeah, I would say for this game, I would say it is worth it. If I was playing this game on a 7900 XTX, I would overclock it because, you know, 10% is pretty nice gains. And just based off my own experience, and I haven't really dug into this much, I've overclocked the 4090, and I think with the 7900 XTX, you gain a bit more out of overclocking as far as performance gains compared to the default profile. I think the 7900 XTX gains a little bit more from overclocking. There's a little more room to overclock. And maybe AMD kind of underclocked it a bit just to not consume a lot of power. That's kind of what I think. So there is room to tweak things more with the RX 7000. The next game we're going to take a look at is Resident Evil 4. And we're running the game here at 4K again with all the settings maxed out. We've turned on the ray trace reflections and everything like that, and we're just going to start essentially a brand new game, go into the house, and then at the end of the first cinematic, we're going to take a look at what the differences are and compare them, okay? And here we actually see pretty good gains as well. We have 10% increase on our averages and 13% increase on our 1% low. So again, you have that 10% that is kind of the average in my opinion. Now, for a little bit of a rant, I've been kind of frustrated with the latest 24.1.1 drivers because when I overclock my card and I go back to my default profile, which I had to do to make this video, I run into freezing issues where my computer crawls to a halt and I have to hard reset it. And I've actually heard from some other people saying that they experiencing the same thing. I've never had this happen to me. Usually I can swap between my overclock profiles on the fly with the game open, and I've had all these games crash on me at least once by doing this and having to hard reset my PC. So I have no idea what the hell's going on with this latest driver, and maybe many of you will not experience this because maybe many of you don't overclock your cards, which is fine, but it is an issue I've encountered. The second thing, it's sort of an update on two videos I made about experiencing stutters with the 7900 XTX and 7800 X3D. And they're all because of smart access memory. As a matter of fact, I had one person message me very recently. They built a brand new PC, first time AMD, 7900 XTX and 7800 X3D. So top of the line AMD PC you can build right now. Same as what I have. They had stuttering issues on Call of Duty and a lot of the other games they played. They were at the verge of returning their PC, and they must have looked it up and ran across my video. And I told them, I said, just try disabling SAM, because that was the source of my issues. And they said they did that on the Adrenaline software, and they haven't had any stuttering issues since. So they were very thankful about it because they were extremely frustrated. And something's going on because I still experience stuttering issues with smart access memory enabled. Sometimes it's when I'm recording, but sometimes it can happen even while not recording. And I've heard from other people who say the same thing, who they say they just disable smart access memory because it just ends up hurting their performance or introduces stutters. So I have no idea what's going on here because these issues do not happen with my 5900X on my AM4 PC. And it's not my motherboard. I tried a brand new motherboard. I tried it on my 7700X. I tried it with another kit of RAM. I built a whole new PC, and I still had these issues. So I don't know, but I can see new builders running into this and then thinking AMD sucks when it's like just a setting you can change, but it shouldn't be this way. So that needs attention. But anyway, if you guys want me to look at some other games, let me know. I want to thank you for watching the video. Leave your comments below, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.